Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium's fifth in a series of webinars on the prescriptive online supply chain risk and resiliency 90-day action tool, taking less than 30 minutes of your leader's time to build a tailored action plan to align to your business needs. We appreciate you taking the time today to attend today's webinar on building an evolving resilient enterprise, and we hope that your family is healthy and safe. Again, this is the fifth webinar in our 6-webinar series. This webinar focuses on driving your supply chain risk and resiliency 90-day action plan. Our final webinar in this series, which will be next month, will be looking at how to promote supply chain risk and resiliency in your company. We look forward to an active webinar. We have a pollev.com, Greg Schlegel 910. It's in the chat. Please click on that and respond to the questionnaire on where you are, what is the industry that you represent. My name is Jim Vries, founder of Enhance International Group. I'll be the host of today. We also have Connor Fitcham from Uphaven Management from South Africa helping us. So thank you, Connor. And of course, we have Greg Schlegel with his vast expertise in supply chain risk management. Greg is one of the original founders of Supply Chain Risk and Resiliency and former president of Apex ASCM. Greg founded the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium in 2010, and he's a celebrated speaker and an esteemed author of the book Supply Chain Risk Management, an Emerging Discipline, published in 2015. Greg, a few words of introduction.
You bet, Jim. Thanks a lot for attending, folks. Great to see everyone on the call to talk about our passion. I am the founder of the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. We've been in business for about 13 years, as Jim mentioned. We'll give you a little more thumbnail sketch details on the consortium in a minute. I'm an old IBMer, spent 9 years with IBM as a supply chain executive consultant, 35 years as a supply chain exec practitioner for a couple of different Fortune 100s. I've taught risk and supply chain at 6 different universities here in the US, and a pleasure to be here with you, and thanks for attending.
Thanks, Greg. And just to give you a little bit of my background, for the past 30 years as a Master Black Belt Supply Chain and Transformation Executive, originally from GE with 15 years under Jack Welch. I've served as a resilient leader for startups to Fortune 500 companies. I work to develop global teams to identify, prioritize, and deliver high return on investment, sustainable improvements, generating self-funding results. I've had a number of leadership positions, from sales to supply chain, finance, reporting, and new product development. I would be viewed more as a generalist. And our teams have developed resilient enterprise ecosystems to accelerate digitization, innovation, supply chain risk management, leadership development, strategy, and value creation. My core belief is that success starts with discovering the untapped potential of the employees, from the leadership all the way down to the shop floor, including suppliers and customers. We live in an ecosystem. It is in developing others that we can excel in building a resilient enterprise. With that, we'll get started here. We hope that this information does find it useful. It will be available on the website, and we encourage your participation in the pollev.com, Greg Schlegel 910. If you do have comments, please use the chat. We'll be checking that throughout. So this week, we also will be having 2 other webinars on Wednesday and Thursday. Please check them out. One on navigating the pending downturn, and the other on supply chain management. So please check us out. With that, a few words on the consortium. Greg.
You bet. Thanks, Jim. Just want to give you a thumbnail sketch of of who we are and what we do. I think it jumped. Thanks. We have 31 companies right now. That's about 1,700 supply chain risk professionals around the globe. These companies you can see on the right, we break them down into education, consulting, and software as a service, kind of their core competencies. These folks bring tools, techniques, methodologies, and solutions to help us identify, assess, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks. That's all we do. On the left-hand side, we got 5 areas of products and services. We got 2 online certificate courses. Some of you may have availed yourself of them. We have a basic course, and then we have a course dedicated to service and public health care. And you do receive certificates of completion from the consortium. We do a lot of coaching and consulting with folks on their risk journey. We bring enterprise platform solutions on the far right. We have folks who bring heavy lifting solutions to help you identify, assess, mitigate, and manage your supply chain risks. Then we have 2 online assessment tools. One is supply chain management online readiness assessment. That tool essentially evaluates and assesses your supply chain process maturity. We're going to be talking about that tool on Thursday of this week. And today we're going to talk about our prescriptive online 90-day action plan, where we're going to touch base on risk maturity, risk appetite, culture, and a game plan. So that gives you a quick thumbnail sketch of the consortium. Back to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. And just a few words on the Enhanced International Group. We're a group of exchange of passionate experts to guide your transformation, to provide self-generating, self-funding results. We have over 50 vetted consulting companies, and SaaS providers that are focused on enabling your enterprise. EIG serves as that master integrator to provide you access to the best and brightest companies. We act as a Swiss Army knife, you could say. Our team is dedicated to empowering the organization's workforce by leveraging EIG partners' tenured thought leadership experience. Our goal is to meet or exceed your expectations with customized, predictable, sustainable, and repeatable action plans. Reviewing the bicycle slide, that it aligns very well with supply chain risk and resiliency. We view companies are an ecosystem, and the ecosystem is represented by these 2 wheels, linking strategy to execution. The 2 geared wheels are connected by chain, with strategy wheel being larger of the 2. The 2 geared wheels are inexplicably linked and in sync. Otherwise, we will become derailed, as often happens through our tactics. Developing an agile supply chain risk and resiliency mindset will ensure that we are successful in our journey. Since the front wheel, the strategy wheel moves at a slower speed, it should generate many rotation cycles on execution. In summary, a strongly linked strategy and execution ecosystem results in positive momentum for the company, its employees, customers, suppliers, and shareholders. Quoting Albert Einstein, life is like a bicycle. To keep your balance, you need to keep on moving. So with that, a little bit about our webinar series. This is, again, the 5th of the 6 webinars. Our final webinar will be on February the 16th. A little bit of an overview on the 90-day action plan that we've been talking about. It starts with an online survey. All your executives log into our online survey. It would take them about 30 minutes to complete. And the total investment of the executives, about 7 hours of time. And it's all virtual onboarding, collaboration, and coaching sessions. We also offer 20 hours of coaching as part of this offering. So it covers where are you from a maturity perspective, who you are from a risk appetite, and how do you operate from an operational propensity or culture perspective, generating this 90-day action plan. And we'll cover each one of these in detail today. And as part of the program, you have this onboarding call with your lead, and then you have a minimum of 5 to 8 executives taking the survey, again, taking in the order of 25 minutes to complete the survey independently. And then we generate a 90-day action plan report using our AI ML algorithms to make sure that it aligns to your needs. And then we have checkpoint calls on the 90-day action plan. We have our first one, second, third, and fourth. And each one of these check calls, when there's actions and you need coaching on those actions, we're here as part of this offering. With that, let's get started. Greg?
You bet. All right. Thanks, Jim. Our agenda looks like this for today. We thought we'd start with why investing in supply chain risk and resiliency pays off, kind of get you grounded, provide some insights for you as we see it and others. Then we'll get into development of your SCR&R persona, as Jim mentioned. We'll give you a brief recap of our supply chain risk and resiliency maturity model. We'll give you a recap of the risk appetite profile and of the operational propensity. Then we have industry-based case studies. We have a host of them based on your answers to the polling question. We'll do our best to give you an insightful profile of a real actual outcome of the tool. Then we thought we'd get into some challenges, provide you some helpful hints and some benefits, then go through the recap of the 90-day process and plan again, and then finish up with a couple of benefits to the bottom line, to you personally, and the bottom line of indoctrinating an SCR&R plan, perhaps using the 90-day approach. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jim and he can kick us off.
Thanks, Greg. So again, the 90-day action tool plan, our first section is why investing in supply chain risk and resiliency pays off. So how does it hit your bottom line? So first, we want to just talk about, we know that there's worldwide inflation is upon us. This is in the news every day. Some countries higher than others. But overall, half the world is in double-digit inflation. So what does that mean to you and us? It means overall there's this momentum for raising prices. So we see supply chain costs going down, but material costs remain high, and a lot of unrest in the world where we used to be getting our supplies, like in the Ukraine, and China's still locked down, trying to open up. So there's a lot of moving parts here on how do we keep the cost down so we can minimize the overall inflation. So what one country's inflation, high inflation, is going to cause another country's inflation. Just a little bit on what we saw in 2020. This does show the supply chain cost increases over the continents. This is, of course, from our friends at McKinsey. And the companies have experienced a range of cost increases. And one of the biggest impacts vary by region. So across the top, we have Europe, Asia Pacific, Greater China, developing markets, and India. And each of these categories on the left here going down are the increases that we see. So we see energies going up in Europe, obviously because of the gas in Russia. That's also impacting then Asia and Pacific. And it's just perturbating itself across the world. Materials are higher in Asia and Pacific and China for obvious reasons. And wages are up in North America over others because we don't have enough folks, and we also raised the minimum wage across the US. So a lot of different factors. Transportation was up. Now transportation has come down just recently at the beginning of this year, and equipment and supplies are up in developing countries. So you can see with global supply chain dependencies, increases in one region will affect other regions. And as risk events continue to occur, we'll continue to have a bit of uncertainty. Greg?
You bet. We wanted to share with you what Gartner calls the triple squeeze of compounding pressures as the recession threatens. This was back in 2022. They share a lot of information with us. And so essentially, it's kind of the triple squeeze goes like this. On the left, first one is persistent high inflation. I think I think everyone agrees. And in this global survey in 2022, 90% of all the CEOs said inflation will be a significant factor in their region, as Jim profiled in the McKinsey slide from 2022 and beyond. The second element of the squeeze is scarce, expensive talent. All right. 47% of CFOs in this report said it's going to be difficult to find and hire enterprise talent, and that will continue. And then the third element of the squeeze, according to Gartner's outcome and findings, was global supply constraints. And about 48% of the CFOs responding believe that supply chain volatility and shortages were going to last beyond 2022, and we agree. So we wanted to give you that that picture image of where we're going and what to expect in 2023. We have another set of insights for you. This comes from Gartner again. Back in 2021, on the left here, they did a global survey, and they asked several questions about responding to a disruptive world. And what I want to do is just give you the top two, and the legend is the blue was in agreement. The respondents were in agreement. The yellow was neutral, and the gray was, I think I disagree. And it was a global survey, a couple hundred companies, but the first two, I think, top two are pretty interesting. And then we want to do something else on the right-hand side. They said within 2 years, we will invest to make our supply chains more agile. 90% of those respondents said yes to that. And the second, within 2 more years, we will invest to make our supply chains more resilient. Very encouraging to us as evangelists. That was almost 90% as well. That was two years ago. Now let's take a look at now. All right. Take a look at right now. In 2023, we wanted to share with you some new insights from different organizations. But essentially what we wanted to show you was there were questions in 2023 to global executives due to the global disruptions over the last 2 years. Has your company decided to bring more operations closer to home? And almost, it was about 30% said yes. But the real kicker on the right-hand side on the top was when they asked, in which geographic areas has your company increased operations? Take a look at it. Canada, US, Mexico, Central, South, and other big move towards North America. We wanted to share that with you. And then a couple other salient statistics here. McKinsey calls global supply chain ecosystem, they call it's a rewiring. That was in their latest 2023 report. They say the global ties still bind us together because every major region in the globe imports about 25% or more of at least one key resource that it needs to add value. China has demonstrated it's no longer a reliable supplier. That comes from ARC. And then CNBC did a study just recently, November 2022, about shipping coming from Asia to elsewhere. U.S. shippers are seeing 20% drop in freight orders. There are more and more ghost sailings, and Asia to the West Coast prices for ocean carrier are down 80%, as Jim mentioned. So some of the logistics costs are coming down from the peak in 2 years. We wanted to share with that. So definitely a different world, folks, and since the pandemic started. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. And this summarizing all of this is, what is a resilient company on the onset and after a downturn like this? This, of course, is the housing crisis here in 2008, 2009. And the companies that had a resilient performance through that time period, how did they perform relative to the S&P 500 and the non-resilience? So, these, again, this is from our good friends at, I think this from McKinsey again, always putting out these excellent reports. As this resilience, as companies that are built on a resilient mindset that provide total shareholder returns that are above average, that's how they define it. They're seeing that there's the number one word on their mind is resilience. And past crises have shown that those resilient organizations bounce back better, as we just said, and they garner a greater shareholder value because of that. And so they always are working on sustainable, inclusive growth. And adaptable, which I think in 2023, they're saying that's the word of the year, is adaptable. We went from resilient to adaptable for 2023. So I thought I'd just share with you that last note that it's certainly making an impact all the way down to the shareholder. And the final point on here is that those companies that are in that top quartile continue to grow. And that's how the resilient companies are identified, in case there's questions about how they do that. Again, McKinsey has excellent articles on this. With that, we'll get started on development of your supply chain persona, supply chain risk and resilient persona action plan. So what was the driver, the impetus to develop this tool? Of course, it was the COVID pandemic and all the different challenges that come out in 2022. The latest challenges were the shortages. Now we are having a demand issue where there's not enough demand in our factories to fill up the factories. That's the issue of today. And the inability to sit down with companies and lead, guide, direct, and coach within companies' hallways was a driver for us to develop this online tool, and the staggering and uneven negative impact of the pandemic. And these shocks will continue on and on and on. They're not going to end here. We're still experiencing the bullwhip effect. So what Greg and I developed here is the supply chain risk and resiliency personas. And what those personas provide you are insights on the maturity of your company, your risk appetite, and your culture or operational propensity. And we turn that into an overall persona, as we'll see later today, and then developing into these execution strategies. So depending on what your makeup is of maturity, risk, appetite, and operational propensity will depend on how you need to execute your supply chain risk and resiliency action plan. And so what we want to do is provide you with that ability to get up and going on what you can do right away in 90 days. So we covered the overall 90-day action plan. Again, this is a survey that takes about 25 minutes of your executive times. We want a cross-functional group of your executives covering all the supply chain, from procurement to sales to finance to operations. And with that, Greg is going to kick us off with the maturity model. Greg?
You bet. Thanks, Jim. We said we'd give you a quick thumbnail sketch recap of the three major outcomes of the graphic outcomes of the tool. This is our 21st century supply chain risk and resiliency maturity model. Our book is geared around that, our classrooms, our workshops, and our webinars. So real quick thumbnail sketch. On the y-axis, you can see supply chain risk and resiliency. That's the maturity from low to high, bottom to top. On the x-axis is competitive advantage from 0 to infinity, and then you see 5 stages. First stage on the bottom left is foundational. That's awareness of what is going on in risk management and education of best practices. Second is visibility, and that is visibility in your supply chain from going upstream to your suppliers to downstream to your customers. Third stage is predictability, and that is digital modeling, using digital twins to do what-if scenarios. The fourth stage is resiliency. That's where you embed all the tools, techniques, and methodologies into your daily supply chain decision-making. And then finally, sustainability is basically how do you expand the tools, techniques, and methodologies and the success that you've had in the first 4 stages. How do you expand that across your enterprise? And then you can see on the bottom that we like to put a heat map together. If you're in foundational and visibility in the early stages, yes, we would say you have some high inherent risks in your supply chain. And as you go up the maturity model, you can see that you can mitigate a host of those risks going forward. So our mantra is always identify, assess, mitigate, and manage risks. And then we always like to ask the question, where are you in your stage, in your maturity? So with that, we have more for you. This is the risk appetite operating frontier. This is the second of 3 graphics that you receive from the tool. This is risk appetite, and we'll give you a thumbnail sketch. On the y-axis again is how you perceive, you and your organization, how you perceive risk. Below the 0.5 line on the lower quadrant, you tend to take a look at risk and you try to be risk averse. You know, risk is not a good thing. It's negative. Above that 0.5 line, the top left quadrant is where folks tend to take risk as an opportunity, a little bit more of a risk reward. On the x-axis are 4, basically 5 if you want to count them, 5 decision risk tactics that support the 4 perspectives that we'll talk about in a minute. They are do nothing. A lot of organizations think that's a decision. Loss control, you do risk steering, diversifying your risk, and or accepting the risk. And so the 4 risk perspectives that you see in the graph are the yellow is what we call pragmatists. Those folks wait till the very last moment to decide on risk. In the green are the conservators. Those are the folks who try to minimize the loss of a risk. The blue are managers. They're the folks who do a lot of balancing between cost benefit and risk reward. And then the burgundy are the maximizers. We call them the go-getters. Those are folks who say, I see a high risk, but I see a high reward. Let's go get that reward before our competitor gets it. And so essentially, those are the 4 risk perspectives in terms of how your company perceives risks. And with that, I'll give it to Jim so he can talk about what's the shape of your kite.
Well, I had a risk of that right now at my desk. 1 second. Sorry.
It happens.
Yeah. All right. So let me see if I can get control again. All right. So operational propensity. How to navigate the resilient journey by Greg showed us how to navigate the resilient journey by leveraging the 21st century maturity model, and of course, how you're operating that risk frontier with the risk appetite. We will next look at this operational propensity. Where are you today, and where do you want to be? And the axis, this is a fairly complicated axis. The axis represent the heartbeats, and the quadrants represent the personas. So we're going to go through this nice and slow. And this is a this is derived from Cameron and Robert Quinn in 1999. We took their base framework and we adapted it for our use here. So we thank them for that. The axis, again, dimension 1. Let's look at stability and control. That's on the top left there, stability and control. We'll call that the x-axis. And then we'll look at dimension 2 is the speed index, which is across the top. And we'll also look at the agility, which is the next external focus, and dimension 4, which is external focus and differentiation, which is on the bottom right. So looking at it in a deeper level, that blue box, the speed index, those are companies that tend to be more bureaucratic and are slow. If you're slow, you're bureaucratic, and you're fast, you're a startup. If you're on the speed index, if you're a moderated, controlled heartbeat versus a long sprint. So then you go to stability and control, and you can go from efficient at the top, very top, you're efficient bureaucratic, to collaborative clan or trapped. And then on the agility, the purple, you see weak trapped to strong agile companies. And on the orange, you see the narrow focus startup to a broad agile type of a mindset. Again, there's no right or wrong here. It's just where you're at in your operational propensity. So some companies are viewed as bureaucratic, hierarchical, structure control. So that's going to be the long pole in the tent. So as you pull out more, you're going to be more bureaucratic. In this particular case, you see that the long pole in the tent, so to speak, or the long pole in the kite, the tail of the kite, is agile. So this particular company has more of an agile mindset and is balanced with a trapped and collaborative startup, and is not very bureaucratic at all. So your kite can have many different shapes. So we always say, how do you operate? And what is the shape of your kite? Are you a single tail kite? You could have two tails. You could have, if you have a conglomerate, or you have two different opposing actions. That's why we ask this to be performed within a division versus across the company. But you may have, within a division, you may have your base goods that are more commodity based, and you have your new products that you're going for, and that would be a two-tail kite. And then a very skinny kite or a fat kite would depend on your overall tendency for a particular persona. And then the question is, are you stable? So the smaller the kite or the bigger the kite. So as you become more adamant, so to speak, their poles in your tent grow. And you could say that if you're a box kite, we often learned in engineering that the box kite was the most stable kite, but not very maneuverable. So there's some companies that want to be a box kite. So again, there's no right or wrong. We did see some trends with our clients over the years, but by different industry and by their maturity as they're maturing in this particular aspect of culture. With that, I want to just cover the next comment, and that is, or area, which is, what is a persona? So a persona is made up of 3 areas: where you are, who you are, and how do you operate. If you go through all the permutations, there's at least 88 different possible personas, which is the reason we need a little AI ML to help us out here to hone in when the questions are answered, so that we feel very confident on the persona and the action plan that's aligned to each of those persona through the 13 years of experience of collaborating and working with clients. With that, we want to go through, these are the areas, the different industries that we have identified for the case studies.
And we thought we would just give you a quick profile of a real result from an electronics organization who has gone through this particular tool. So what's it look like? Essentially, we'll talk about our 3 graphic outcomes. On the left, you see the 5-stage model. You can see 2 icons. One is red, one is black. What we do in the survey is we ask two different types of questions. Where do you feel, how do you feel about risk today? And where would you like to go? Where would you like to go in terms of going forward in the future? So the red icon is as is. That's your as is position for that company. Seems to be at the beginning of the 2nd stage visibility. And essentially then they said, well, we'd like to move forward over the next couple months and a year in the visibility and finish out that stage. All good. So they are in the visibility stage. That's very good. That says they basically have spent some time getting educated perhaps on risk management and also becoming aware of some of the best practices. In the middle, we have our risk appetite. And as you can see, it's the same graph we just talked about in previous slides, the 4 different risk perspectives. To us, there's only 4. And remember, there's no right or wrong in this analysis. It's just different. And this organization came in as a pragmatist and a conservator. And you might say, because you can see that their oval, their Venn diagram touches pragmatists and conservators right in the middle of each. All right. Is it okay? Can companies have more than one risk perspective? Of course. Don't worry about that. All right. And then finally, on the right-hand side is their operational propensity, or what we call their culture. And again, this organization came up as agile with a classic single tail. And remember, on the operational propensity side, the farther away you are from the center, the stronger the propensity or culture is in your organization. So we wanted to share what that persona looked like from the electronics company who went through the tool. Next. We actually got some user feedback, and that always happens. And that's part of the process that Jim presented to you with all the checkpoint calls. What did they say to us? On the maturity side on the left, they said, well, yeah, we agree. We're a small startup company. We use a lot of Excel spreadsheets. We said, okay, that's fine. Our company is small and young. We're operating off Excel spreadsheets. We're eager to increase visibility. Understood. Very good. Our customers are North America. Our contract manufacturers are in Asia. Not surprising in electronics. And we're not looking past the visibility stage in the next 12 months. So they're doing it, trying it, fixing it, and they're trying to move forward and improve their visibility. What did they say about the risk appetite? Again, they agreed. Yeah, we're probably pragmatists and conservators. We're pretty risk averse when we make decisions, excuse me, from a risk point of view. They said they were just acquired by a venture capitalist. With that recent change, we expect that we will change our risk appetite, perhaps. All right. They want to move more to a manager culture where they use tools and techniques to take a look at cost versus benefit and risk versus reward. They're very encouraging. They did say they're reactionary. We wait till the last minute. There's a sense that we want to change, but change is hard. And then finally, on the operational propensity side, again, they're small. They said they're small and nimble. That's fine. We strive to be agile and ready to make changes. Our data is available for everyone to view, so they're trying to increase their transparency and visibility. And we're a startup. We're agile. When we have a problem, we tend to go solve it. So again, there's no right or wrong answer, just different. And then there's one more element of the tool, and that is the action plan. So based on where you are, who you are, and how you operate. This is an action plan that came out for this electronics company. Kind of busy, all right? Identify all existing and possible risks, sure. Maybe map a supply chain manually or digitally, take a product line and map it from customer all the way back to supplier visually on a board. We don't care what you use. The third one was, when you do the mapping, you're probably going to identify some key suppliers, and you might want to calculate their Altman Z-score. What the heck is Altman Z-score? That is a bankruptcy predictor methodology. It's a tool, it's a method, it's an algorithm where it has a 95% forecast accuracy, forecasting bankruptcy 12 to 15 months into the future. Who wouldn't want that as a key supplier financial health risk dashboard? Who? It's free. You can find it on Wikipedia. All you need is an income statement and a balance sheet. We said maybe you want to secure a sponsor for funding and executive cover, and maybe an SCR&R lead. Begin to assess and identify and prioritize your risks that you identify. All good. Those are some of the techniques we use. Maybe you want to subscribe to a risk alert system. They are out there, not necessarily just the ones in the consortium, but they are out there to do the heavy lifting to help you identify risks within your global supply chain. And then we said maybe you want to develop key risk indicators and maybe build some dashboards. So that is really what came out of this company's, the electronic company's process of the tool. And with that, I'll turn it back to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. And appreciate any questions you have throughout this webinar. Please do ask your questions in the chat. Always love to hear your feedback and your questions. With that, we'll enter into the next section on challenges, hints, and benefits. You know, how do you get a return on investment? And we know that the challenges will continue to change as we see these challenges in the past. We'll have new challenges in the future as risk event changes, morph, and change. With that, we'll talk about some of the challenges getting to start. You know, it's really aligning to your company's vision. What is your company's vision, and how does risk enter into it? Is your leadership aligned? Are they aligned to addressing supply chain risk and resiliency? Is there alignment across the organization, across the different parts of the organization, from sales to supply chain to operations to finance? Do you have a corporate sponsor? Who is a sponsor? Does it come through finance? Does it come through supply chain? Who's going to sponsor this project? And then, of course, your risk appetite and addressing what is your risk appetite? Are you more pragmatic, or are you looking to be proactive on risk? And then what's your operational propensity, as we discussed? Again, there's no right or wrong in any of this. It's just these are challenges that we see quite often, is if these are not if we don't have these addressed, then we're going to struggle getting the program out and going. Of course, with any large initiative, it comes up pretty often is communication. You just, come up with a vision, socialize it, gain consensus and alignment to that vision of how you're going to deploy supply chain risk management in your company. Education, having everybody speak the same language is so important. Very often terms are, even within the company culture, there's terms in supply chain risk management that may not fit your culture. So you have to say it in a different way to fit your culture, because that word is already used for something else. So the education and the communication of that education is critically important. Awareness, making folks aware that we could have done something and we didn't do something. And then create that burning platform of and visibility of how much money we've lost because we haven't addressed this. And then again, we have to align it to the corporate and division goals so that there's a clear reason why we're doing this program relative to the other many initiatives that you have for the company. Again, as far as a 90-day action plan benefits, there is no good or bad persona. We don't look for, you need to change your persona. We're not looking to change the persona. We said, this is where you're at. Where do you want to go? And, then we gauge on how fast we can get to that next level, and we'll move at your pace. Don't be concerned if your company has multiple personas by division. Kind of mentioned that before. That's often the case. A single division may have multiple personas, or certainly a company, if it has multi-divisions, it's most common that you're going to have different personas. Make sure you have a lead, a supply chain manager, or somebody who knows and can navigate throughout the company. So they have to have very strong communications because they're going to be talking across the company. And then we all know that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So link speed of execution and to alignment of your program, and then managing your personas is essential to the success of the program. So be self-effacing. Don't avoid what you are. Have everybody embrace it, embrace that persona, so that you can move forward as a company. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg to close it out. Greg?
Okay, you bet. Coming off the you bet 90-day action plan program. We thought we'd give you a little recap again before we finish strong. So essentially, we gave you the process. This is it from top to bottom, left to right. Again, about 7 hours of time invested over a 3-month period. That's what we've witnessed. Everything is virtual. We can do it onboarding, collaboration, as Jim mentioned. You get the 3 different graphs in terms of your as-is position, and then you get a 90-day action plan, which we went through one example, and then we follow up with the checkpoint calls to lead, guide, direct, and coach you, and make sure that you have a good customer experience with your action items. So with that, we have a few more threads that we'd like to talk to you about. So here's the ask. What do we ask of you and your organization? Maybe get 5 to 8 executives from your company to fill out the 90 questions. That's all there are. All right. Could the executives be department heads from different disciplines? You can see procurement, logistics, classical supply chain end-to-end, including sales and finance. We want to get different perspectives on risk management. And then could the executives be from the same division or product line? We like to start small, think big, start small, implement quick. So we always advocate maybe you take a smaller division or a small product line, get the folks together, and that is your quorum, and that seems to work pretty well. So that's pretty much the ask. What do you get? Well, again, you get a sense of where you are in our maturity model. You get a sense of who you are relative to how you perceive risk in your organization. You get a sense of how you operate, which is your operational propensity or culture. And you get a 90-day aligned action plan, and it's aligned to your personas so that you can have a good, solid supply chain risk experience and actually move forward in the journey. You do all those things, we think it's pretty much a strategic advantage to your bottom line. And basically, there's a bonus in there for you. If you provide us 5 or more executives within the confines of this tool and exercise, the consortium will offer your company 1 free pass to our supply chain risk and resiliency online course, which is basically our book. All right. It's the MBA class. It's about $1,400 US, and you get a certificate from our consortium and our education partner, Educazi. And so with that, on the last section here, just a few more threads about the benefits. to you of indoctrinating a SCR&R program. Take a look. First and foremost, here's what we've witnessed over the last 13 years in this space. One, cost reduction. Yes, we've seen organizations have their insurance premiums reduced by 10% or more. Why? Because the insurance company is very impressed with their end-to-end robust supply chain risk and resiliency program. Also, if you automate your risk workflow, we've seen that improve cost reduction of 10% or more. Automating the decision process so that you have a quality, repeatable risk process. There's more. Cost avoidance. As you become more and more effective in risk detection and assessment, normally the exemplars are about 17 to 20% more effective than their nearest competitor. That can be a cost avoidance. And if you are more effective and better than your nearest competitor in identifying, assessing, and mitigating, you can have a cost avoidance of 10% or more because you're getting better at identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks and lowering your costs. There's more. If you do those first two, you're going to improve your working capital. The exemplar organizations that we work with have about a 94% cash flow forecasting accuracy level. That's 13% higher than their nearest competitor. And if you do that, you can free up cash anywhere from 10 to 30%, and you will have a friend called the CFO, all right, because you're identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks faster than your nearest competitor and driving down the cost. All right, there's more. We advocate cash conversion cycle. If you use this as a KPI, which is inventory plus receivables minus payables, we think it's a good KPI for supply chain and a great one for supply chain risk. All right, and finally, the Altman Z-score, we mentioned it. It has a 95% forecast accuracy, 12 to 15 months. Who wouldn't want to understand what their key supplier financial health is at any point in time, 12 to 15 months before that supplier goes out of business? Why do we advocate that? Because we've found out that to change a key supplier is going to cost you anywhere from $1 to $3 million US to change them out. So think big, start small, act fast. And we have one more slide to share with you. And that's, we thought we would profile what a mature risk organization looks like. What are some of the attributes? Real quick, they have processes, clear communication, as Jim and I talked about. They have the ability to do what if scenarios and change analysis. What else do they have? They have an organizational structure. They have accountability for risk management. You know, you operate based on how you are measured. They have roles and responsibilities established. What else do they have? They have knowledge databases, and they integrate and embed those best practices into their decision-making every day. There's more. They have technology. I mean, we don't have time to talk about all the technology in this 1 hour, but they use queries, heat maps, dashboards, heavy solutions to do heavy lifting, including risk alerts. And finally, they have performance measurements. They have the ability to integrate and align risk with your corporate goals. That's the key. That's the secret sauce. And then essentially they have a lot of historical analysis that they can show folks how they're doing, the ROI. So with that, we'll finish up with a quick recap of our offerings. We're on demand. We have education. We mentioned we have 2 online certificate courses. Supply chain readiness, that assesses your supply chain process maturity. We're going to talk about that on Thursday in our webinar. We talked about supply chain risk and resiliency action plan. That was our session today. We talked about how we have supply chain risk management platforms, solutions to do the heavy lifting. And we do a lot of journey consulting in terms of leading, guiding, directing, and coaching. And with that, I'll turn it back to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. Just to close it out, just a reminder that we have 2 more webinars this week. And we hope to see you at those webinars. Please reach out if you have not seen the marketing for that. And then we do have the webinar coming up next month on February 16th to close it out. And with that, if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat. And with that, Greg, any closing comments?
You bet. Connor just put in the registration link in the chat, folks, for our Thursday webinar on supply chain readiness assessment. So feel free to take a look at that. And I would just say, you know, folks, with rising inflation and a distinct possibility of a downturn coming at us, it's more important it's more important than ever to understand your supply chain risk maturity, your appetite, and especially your culture and your operating propensity. Why? To survive and thrive through the next set of supply chain risk and resiliency disruptions. So with that, wish everyone all the best.